Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. For parents who find themselves estranged from their adult children, I'm a big fan of individual therapy. Being able to speak freely about problems that are both very painful and very personal can in itself provide relief and comfort. But at the same time, just talking about estrangement with a therapist is not what I have in mind when I recommend therapy to parents. So I thought I'd share my personal therapy wish list in this episode. These are the things that I would like for you to have if you decide to get therapy during estrangement. And I'm sharing these so that if they make sense to you, you can share them with your own local therapist. First, I should provide some context. This is very important. It's crystal clear from years of research that no matter what anyone claims, there is no single approach, method, or style of therapy that in itself is more effective than any other. Which means there are many different evidence-based approaches to therapy. On display in this episode will be my personal and professional bias based on my training and experience about what therapy is and what it's best to do in therapy. Although I'll only be speaking from the approach that I take as a therapist, I acknowledge that mine is not the only valid approach. Having said that, I believe that therapy is not for seeking advice or getting help with solving a particular problem. In my mind, problem solving is what consulting is for. If what you want to do is talk to someone who specializes in estrangement so you can better understand what's happening and what you might be able to do about it, then please feel free to schedule a consultation with me at your convenience. I'll put a link to my scheduling tool in the show notes. But consultation is not therapy. And of the two, I believe that therapy is ultimately more valuable. To me, therapy is about learning how to support and basically parent yourself well through whatever comes at you in life. It often involves healing from the kinds of emotional injuries that create repetitive patterns. It's about you fully becoming not some imagined person you're meant to be, but the person you already are, underneath the false beliefs and defenses and fears and mental habits that we all seem to fall into that alienate us from ourselves. In short, therapy should help us finally come home to ourselves and live comfortably there. None of the personal healing in therapy, none of that personal growth is work that your adult child or children can participate in with you. But all of it is work that can benefit and start to heal the relationship you share with them. Your healing is their healing too. A troubled relationship with your adult child or children is, in my opinion, best utilized as a jumping-off point for therapy, not a focal point. Making other people the focus of your individual therapy sessions would be like seeing a physical therapist for shoulder pain and spending your appointment time watching them work on someone else's shoulder. Make sure your therapy focuses on you and your experience. That's my first tip. My second tip for what to do in therapy is probably first in order of importance, and that is to figure out whether you may have trauma. Trauma is not automatically addressed by therapy. Unfortunately, it is possible to have decades of therapy, even good therapy, and still bear the burden of untreated trauma. So if you think you might have trauma, or if past therapy hasn't resolved core emotional pain or impulsivity, you might want to request a referral to a trauma specialist. That is, someone whose caseload consists of clients working specifically on trauma. You don't have to give up your regular therapist if you like them. They can work in parallel, or you can focus on trauma treatment with a specialist for a while and then come back to your therapist. It's important to understand that trauma precedes and underpins many other problems. So thing number 2 to do in therapy is get trauma treated by someone who knows what they're doing. Thing number 3 would be to expect discomfort. Productive therapy doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it's excruciating. You might need to look at things that are hard to look at and feel emotions you'd rather not feel. Things might seem worse before they get better. You may feel like you're falling apart when you come into contact with neglected parts of yourself that have been waiting for your attention, understanding, and compassion. But sometimes when we feel like we're falling apart, those are actually the times when we're really coming together. Thing number 4 to do in therapy is to ask for what you need. For example, if you're not seeing any progress, talk with your therapist about what it is you're doing in therapy and how and why. Ask them to review your treatment plan with you. Ask them for more feedback. Ask them to challenge you or to stop challenging you so much. It is ultimately your therapist's responsibility to make sure therapy is productive, but you don't have to be passive. In fact, the more the two of you can collaborate in your treatment, the better. Thing number 5 to do in therapy is to focus on the here and now rather than there and then. We all tell stories in therapy about what happened yesterday or last week and who said what and how we responded and then what happened. But the purpose of stories in productive therapy is to bring them into the here and now of the therapy itself. Looking back at what happened, what is your experience of it? What do you notice about how you're feeling or thinking? What is it like for you right here, right now, to tell your therapist about this? How does your therapist's reaction affect you? You and your therapist can use whatever you bring in as fodder for self-knowledge or healing or growth. It all happens in the here and now, just as in physical therapy. Thing number 6 to do in therapy is take risks. Once you and your therapist have established enough trust that you feel reasonably safe with them, begin taking small emotional risks, and if those go well, then try bigger ones. Example of risks might be sharing something with your therapist that you're uncomfortable saying out loud, or confronting your therapist about something they said to you that felt hurtful or judgmental. If you do take a risk with your therapist, point that out by saying, "I'm going to take what feels like a big risk right now." That should clue your therapist into what you're doing and give them a chance to give you their very best in return for your courage. Let me run down that list again of 6 good things to do in therapy. Number 1, remember to focus on your own experience. You wouldn't pay a physical therapist to spend your appointment time working on someone else. 2, if appropriate, get trauma-specific treatment from a trauma specialist. Don't be confused by the often used phrase trauma-informed. I myself am a trauma-informed therapist, but I refer out for trauma-focused treatment. Number 3, expect discomfort. A productive course of therapy can be one of the hardest worthwhile things you'll ever do. Number 4, ask for what you need. Being too passive in therapy could lead to wasted time and money. And yet, if therapy fails you, in my view, as a therapist, that is always my fault, not yours. So don't blame yourself if you feel like therapy has failed you in the past. Number 5, focus on the here and now. That's where healing, learning, and growth happen. And lastly, number 6, take some risks. Work on safety first, but then use the relationship with your therapist to expand your skills and confidence. What will happen to your relationship with your estranged adult child if your individual therapy goes well? Why not find out for yourself? I'll put some links in the show notes to online directories where you can search for a therapist by zip or postal code. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.